say that why don't you just throw the old mode out? The new mode is much better. But in general, it's you have to deal with all these stupid rules between renters and owners about insulation, air conditioner, all these sorts of things. So there was this study showing that owner-occupied housing in California are 12 to 20% more likely to have insulation than rental occupied housing units. So if you're an owner, there is no internal inconsistency between the decision of insulation, who gets the benefit of insulation, right? So as a renter, I suspect a lot of you might be renting. As a renter, do you care about energy efficiency of the houses? So imagine, yes. So imagine the rental rates. So if the renters are really caring about energy efficiency of the houses they rent, they would ask for higher rental rates for. They would ask for lower rental rates for houses with low energy efficiency. So if you realize the insulation of this house is bad, you will bargain with your landlord saying that I'm not going to pay for this rental rate. I'm going to pay a huge energy bill because of your bad insulation. I need to get compensated. If both parties could bargain in that way, a cost solution would lead the owners or the landlords to adopt the optimal energy efficient treatment of the houses. It would definitely deal with this problem, right? But if there are transaction costs, there's inattention for renters, there are all these sorts of issues kicking in. This price mechanism might not work here. Would you negotiate with your landlord about lowering the rate for bad energy efficiency? Not so much. So we will talk about this later. So a test about how smart renters are or how inefficient the particular principal agent problem appears to be is to look at whether or not rental rates differ. Some have hedonic pricing strategy to look at whether or not rental rate houses differ in terms of energy efficiency. There's the issue of credit conference, right? If the houses are expensive, cars are expensive, even air conditioners are expensive. Do we suggest it? If I have a limited budget, I can only search for modes within my budget, and I'm optimizing over different attributes that limit my ability to search for more efficient mode. So obviously, direct policy response would be we should make credit easier to get to access for durable goods, especially for durable goods with a high upfront cost, and also durable goods where energy bills, future accumulated energy bills takes up a larger share of its life cycle cost. I don't know whether it's related, but I can when I'm buying an air conditioner, they're actually offering loans. They're offering options where you can pay the air conditioner prices in 4 or 5 installments. If that applies to all the expensive durable energy heavy, energy intensive goods, it will solve this credit constraint issue as much as possible. So to re-emphasize, so the solutions to an a potential underinvestment in energy efficiency issues depends on whether or not the underinvestment is a kind of hard constraint or it's a soft information constraint. If the only problems come through the fact that individual consumers, private consumers are not taking into consideration of all the social benefits of better energy efficient appliances, cars, we should tax the gasoline, we should tax fossil fuel contents in electricity, we should tax carbon in the electricity generation sector. That solves all the problems. However, if the sources of inefficiency come from inattention, lack of information, credit constraints, principal agents problem in rental market, we need to solve this problem individually. In private, like providing information, providing gadgets, apps, websites for people to calculate their energy bill very easily. I think least for air conditioner, an easy way is for price matching website. I haven't seen this features, but imagine if you're helping your consumers, you're helping your buyers to form more thoughtful purchasing decisions of cars and air conditioners. You should offer some add-ons for your website, some apps to help them compare prices, both in terms of purchasing prices across modes, but also in lifetime energy prices of all these modes, across all these modes, as long as they input their intensity of usage. So obviously, the more intensive you use your cars or air conditioners, the higher heating or cooling need you need, the more important are the energy efficiency of these features. I think we've talked about this issue. I'm skipping this issue because I think have we talked about this example? I think we talked about this example. Informing you, we talked about this example in the empirical session in randomized control trials, experiments on exposing you to information about your neighbor's energy efficiency of to solve the soft constraint problem, the soft inefficiency problem. One sub-subject of economics is sometimes we call behavioral economics. Behavioral economics is the purpose of this discipline is to help people understand, to first accept the fact that agents, individual agents, are probably not rational enough. They're not maximizing their utility in the way economists assume them to have been doing. And it kind of kind of theorize on types of behavioral biases, type of inattention, lack of information, psychological, social factors that come into people's decision-making process that deviates from the classical economic assumptions, and think about ways to correct these biases without using hard solutions such as legal index. So we talked about this. Framing matters. The way information gets presented to people affect their decisions, which shouldn't be if people have been fully rational, right? Default effect is an example. People typically would like to stick to their default choices. So if you're offered 3 choices of life insurance, a lot of the time people stay with the default one. Like if your employer is offering you 3 choices of life insurance, you might just stay with whatever the company offers you as a default, while these life insurances could give you very different expected return, and switching from a default choice to a higher return one means a lot to you. In terms of future payments. But a lot of people just don't care about this. They haven't thought about this. They always assume that the default ones presented to them is the best for them. So these could be used. These notion could be used a lot in web design. Like in this figure, it's much likely that you will click this plus option when it's presented in a highlighted way. Right? Imagine if the government wants to push for adoption of more energy efficient plans or cars, whatever. You can offer a menu like that and present the most energy efficient one in between in elevated highlighted. So these non-price solutions, sometimes we call these nudges, and we affect people's perceptions, we affect their information, we affect how information gets delivered to them as well. We affect default choices. We design manuals where we induce people into our as policymakers preferred choices, but we don't force them to do so. They can still choose an energy inefficient option. We're just making sure that when people are not paying attention, when they don't care, when they always want to stick to the default, we want them to stick to the default that we want them to do. So a recommendation is a book called Nudge. Richard Thaler was a Nobel Prize winner a few years ago, I think. So he came up with the public policy notion of nudging. Nudge is, as we use the term in many aspects, the way without forbidding any options or just making some options more salient to people. An example would be, you suppose you want people to eat more healthy food. Putting fruit at eye levels counts as a nudge. Banning junk food does not. So that if you want the kids to eat more healthily, you put the fruits in the entrance place. You put the junk food at the end of the queue. They might pick a lot of fruits at the beginning, and in the end they realize they can't take all this junk food, and they just leave it there. Something along those lines, but it's not forbidding the groups of people who have very strong taste, which really like junk food, to enjoy their junk food. So the idea of nudging is used a lot on improving energy efficiency, as we discussed. We can ignore this. This is another example. So imagine they are presenting different insulation policies. Government, the governments or apartments could always try to present its preferred choice as a default choice or as a prominent choice among all these choice sets. Let's take a break, 7 minutes break. Let's meet again at 9:05. It's about people's preferences. We should respect that, right? If for some reason people have already been making a rational choice, we should respect that, and there's nothing the policies, the public, the government could do apart from just educating them about the importance of the environment, or just implementing whatever Pigolian policy, Pigolian tax you need to implement on gasoline, on electricity, and so on. So the idea, the attention, so it's a pretty heavily discussed, debated issue in the US. Part of the reason is that in general, the belief is that people, US residents drive a lot, and sometimes they drive pretty kind of gas guzzlers, and we call this heavily used, less energy efficient cars with bad fuel economy. The reason is why, and what are the ways that EPA or other kind of agencies trying to push for more energy, better use of energy could deal with it. So they offer, EPA has been publishing data, numbers, statistics on the comparison of different types of cars, like the impact of light duty GHG rules. And according to EPA's calculation, fuel savings for different models of cars is greatly exceeds cost of vehicles. So differences between cost of vehicles, more energy efficient car compared to less energy efficient cars. The more energy efficient cars do not always appear to be much more expensive. That's EPA's data. But if you're a car user, if you purchase new cars, I talked to a lot of people who are saying, you know, we care about energy efficiency a lot. We did all the calculations. Of course, when you're buying an air conditioner, you're not paying that much attention. You're not going to calculate these your monthly energy use, your future energy use. Air conditioner is a minor investment compared to cars. Cars are usually an important investment. So as a car buyer, people are making all these calculations, are incorporating energy efficient pretty prominently into their purchasing decisions. And the car makers are going to tell you that the reason that consumers are not buying the best performing cars in fuel economy is because the cars that did better scores higher, and in fuel economy might not score as high in terms of performance and size. Maybe the cars gives you the best driving experience, the enjoyment of speeding are not the most energy efficient cars, and that's the reason people are avoiding energy efficient cars. It's not just these people don't know or they don't pay attention or they're bad at math. It's just they value other attributes of the cars. So how do we test for this theory? It's like a hedonic pricing, right? We are trying to explain whether or not differences in cars reflect differences in car prices reflect differences in fuel economy. So imagine if controlling for all other attributes, suppose the cars are completely comparable in all other attributes, the only difference is in energy efficiency. And we have found that the more energy efficient cars saves you discounted fuel bill, gasoline bill by 10,000 in a year. We can compare the prices. We can look at the prices. So suppose you're going to use this car for 5 years, you should expect the price for the more energy efficient cars to be like $40,000 higher than the other one. You would expect the difference in purchasing price to compensate for differences in discounted future energy bills, as similar as the free migration assumptions we have in the hedonic pricing model. So if holding all the other attributes constant, if these cars are comparable in other dimensions, the more energy efficient cars are not significantly pricier than the less energy efficient cars, then we can say that people are not making the best purchasing decisions, because there's apparently an arbitrage opportunities. They should all buy the more expensive and better energy. The not actually more expensive, but better in terms of energy efficiency cars, right? So what I'm saying is that rationality, rational consumers, the fact that people have been making optimal decisions between the trade-off of car purchasing prices and future energy bills would indicate that the differences in discounted future energy bills between a good fuel economy car and a bad fuel economy car should be exactly offset by their differences in initial prices. If that's not the case, if the initial price difference only account for a small proportion of the difference in future energy bill, we should say something about these people are not making rational choices, right? If accounting for all the differences along other attributes of the cars, the more energy efficient cars, the better fuel economy cars are not much higher in terms of price compared to less energy efficient cars. Then why don't people just buy the high performance energy efficient cars? It means that these people are not making a good choice to raise the demand for high energy efficient cars and raise their price. That's the basic logic. So a numerical example, I hope I'm making things clear. In case I didn't, let's look at an example. We're comparing a Camry and an Accord. The Camry has an MPG of 27.3. Accord has an MPG of 30.4. Which car is the more energy efficient mode? Accord is the more energy efficient mode, right? For 1 gallon, it covers more miles. And Accord is more expensive as well. So first numerical exercise we could conduct is look at how much the price difference reflects their differences in energy efficiency. So suppose we're driving 12,000. Obviously, how much you value energy efficiency depends on how often you drive, how much you drive. So suppose you're driving 12,000 miles a year, and gas price is $3 per gallon. How much would you save additionally on Accord? There should be 3 times 12,000 divided by should be something along this line, right? If you divide miles by MPG, it tells you how much gallon you need to use per year. And the difference tells you how much more gallon you need to use driving Camry, covering the same distance. Times the gasoline cost tells you how much you save by driving an Accord. So if you did the math, the number will be $130 US dollar per year in terms of gasoline price, gasoline bill saving driving Camry. And we know that their price difference is 135, right? No, not 135. The price difference is 175. So it means that if you drive these cars for 2 years, the difference in energy bill, the difference in gasoline bill will more than compensate for their initial price differences. Now, does it tell you, so is this piece of information sufficient to persuade you that people vastly underestimate energy efficiency when they're doing their car purchases? The information presented is Accord is 175 US dollar more expensive than Camry, but by driving Accord, it saves you gasoline bill by 130 per year. So if you drive these cars for 2 years, it will more than compensate for your initial additional investment in Accord. Is this an evidence of undervaluation of energy efficiency from consumers' point of view, from consumers' perspective?
Wow, this is just the optimal, the best values that we can get. We don't know how, according to how the driver will really drive. If he drives sportive or he drives conservatively, we have a different effective consumption. So it's just an indicator.
Yes, of course, depends on how much you drive, right? If you drive, you can work on these numbers. And another important issue is obviously these cars might differ along other dimensions as well, right? It's a hedonic pricing approach. So whenever you apply the hedonic pricing approach, the issue is, does your X variable explains your Y variable without the confounding effects of other attributes? It might just be that. So suppose let's just simplify as much as possible, taking account of your comment. If we just assume that you, on average, everyone in the U.S., everyone in wherever these cars are sold, drive 12,000 miles a year. And these cars are comparable along other dimensions. Will these present, if evidence presented to you as an evidence of under-evaluation of energy efficiency?
I still think that because it's a hedonic approach, I mean, as you said, it's difficult to have a really full comparison because many other aspects affect the price of these cars, even if they're in the same class, I mean, same level of cars. So maybe there are some other differences that we cannot see, like other costs that are not energetic. Maybe they are related to other kind of expenses during the use. So, I mean,
Yeah,
it's indicative.
yes, indeed. So I'm trying to say that if you ignore the other differences, suppose they're identical along other dimensions, would your answer be yes? It should be yes, right? If these cars are comparable in all other dimensions, and we are right about the average miles driven where people are driving. The fact that Econ is not much more expensive than Camry, and Econ could save you an energy bill at a much higher rate than Camry, means that people are not paying enough about energy bills. Otherwise, they should buy. They should all switch to Accord. No one should be buying for Camry. That would push the manufacturers of Camry and Accord to adjust their pricing decisions up to a point where their price difference would reflect discounted future energy cost differences, right? If that's not happening, it means that the demand shift from Camry to Accord is not strong enough, and that could eventually be put down to most likely consumers in inattentional naivety. But as Emma put this very convincingly, there are other reasons that we care more about than energy efficiency that also enters into the price of cars. Camry and Accord are similar, but they're not identical. They're not identical. There might be small differences in horsepower, reliability, style, colors, all sorts of things you care about cars. So the approach I'm introducing, because I'm trying to present this here because I think it's really innovative, their method, is to study how prices of identical cars change when due to change in gasoline prices. So basically, we could look at identical cars. Their discounted future fuel economy depends on their discounted value of energy bills, future energy bills, future gasoline bills depends on two factors. First is the MPG of these cars, which is fixed. And the second is gasoline prices, right? Imagine when gasoline prices change, it will make one mode of car more attractive than the other mode of cars, right? Now the question for you is, when the gas price increases, would that push you to switch from Camry to Accord or the other way around? Would that make Accord or Camry more attractive to you, controlling for all other factors? If the gasoline price changes, if the gasoline price increases. Quentin said that Accord should be more attractive. Yes, Accord says future energy bill, right? Accord is the one that makes you makes you use lower amount of gasoline to cover the same distance. So if gasoline price is more expensive, it shifts your decision in favor of Accord. So in a market where consumers are fully rational, they take full consideration of fuel economy, and the car makers, the automobile manufacturers, react to changes in gasoline prices fast enough. We should we expect how should we expect the price movements of these two cars? So imagine in the market we have Accord and Camry. Accord is more energy efficient. Gas price increases. How would it affect the prices of Camry and Accord? The purchasing price of Camry and Accord. If first consumers are rational, they take into consideration about prices, about energy bill and prices in a rational way. And second, the car makers make swift decisions, swift price decisions, facing changing market conditions. So obviously, one idea is that both of their prices might just drop. Right? It makes these cars more expensive in aggregation. It reduces the demand for both cars, right? In general, because for the same purchase price, you are now expecting the subsequent cost to be higher, and it shift the demand for these cars inward. And it shift the demand for these cars inward more. It shift the demand of which specific model of cars more. So if you expect both of their prices to drop, which mode do you expect the price to drop a lot more than the others? The price should drop by a larger amount for Camry than Accord, right? Or maybe the price doesn't drop for Accord, although it makes driving Accord more expensive, it makes driving Camry much more expensive. So Accord gets a lot of consumers from Camry. But in general, the price gap between Accord and Camry should be larger, facing an increase in MPG. Facing an increase in gas prices. Do you agree? Do you accept this? So that's how these people think about design and empirical tests. Look at how changes in prices, changes in fuel prices affect the price gap between Camry and Accord, two modes of cars with different fuel economy. And if the widening of price gap between Camry and Accord correspond quite nicely to changes in discounted future energy bill as a result of price increase only, we are kind of saying that people are rational. Meanwhile, if the price gap doesn't change, or the price gap changes by a little amount, facing gasoline price changes, facing gasoline price increase, we're saying that maybe consumers don't respond as quickly, or the car makers are not responding quickly, right? So again, returning to the numerical approach. Example: if the price of gasoline rises by 1, cost of driving of both cars increase. The cost of driving for the same distance, did this right? The cost of driving for the same distance will increase by 440 for Camry and will increase by 394 for Accord. So the question for you, let's do this question for you. Those cars last for 5 years and we don't count future costs. How would you expect the price gap between Camry and Accord to change when the market when the information is perfect? So basically, the logic goes in this way: the price of gasoline raises by $1 because Accord is the more energy efficient car. Um, Consumers would prefer Accord better, which pushes up the price of Accord. And ideally, if we expect the information to be perfect, consumers are making switches fast enough. Car makers are making price adjustments fast enough. What would you expect the price gap between Camry and Accord to be? A quantitative number? A quantitative number? Answer? So we see here the cost of driving of Camry as the suppose everyone drives 12,000 miles. So every year, $1 increase in gasoline price means that for every year, Camry causes an additional 46 gap in energy bill, right? Every year, $1 increase in gasoline price makes this into price makes is higher than. So that's additional spending on Camry just as a result of price changes. It's not a result of anything else. It's not a result of its existing MPG. So it's supposed the car lasts for 5 years. You expect the time 46 by 5. So you should expect the price gap between Accord and Camry to widen by 230. Right? So the price gap widen by 230. And if the price gap widens by less than 230, it means that there must be some obstacles in translating the energy bill differences into car price differences. Either it's because consumers are not responding or car makers are not responding. So based on this idea, we can design empirical approach to test for energy efficiency gap. Right? What we need to see is whenever there are fluctuations in gasoline prices, how the price gap between energy efficient cars and energy inefficient cars to respond. If the response is small, we are saying that there's a large probability that people haven't been taking consideration of energy efficiency much in their car purchase decisions. On the other hand, if people have been fully basing their purchasing decisions on future energy costs, market responds quickly, we should expect the additional savings for energy efficient cars as a result of gasoline price fluctuations to be exactly compensated by its higher price, by the growth of its price at a higher rate than the energy inefficient cars. That's the basic idea. So to test this information, it should be easy to be tested. The theory could be easily tested using market share data, using all the price data of different types of cars and fluctuations in gasoline prices, right? This is the information from one paper showing that after a 1% increase in fuel price, the market share of different types of cars changes in a way kind of intuitively predicted by rational consumers. The most energy efficient cars would gain a gross market share compared to less efficient cars. So that's a sign of people adjusting their purchasing behavior somewhat swiftly. So there is this paper, if you're interested in this paper, Oglet and Wozni, 2014. It shows that the vehicle prices would move in a way as if consumers are indifferent between $1 in discounted future gas cost and 76 cents in the vehicle purchase price. So basically, go back to our original example. It's like saying that this is 230 is our predicted expected price gap between Camry and Accord, assuming full information, rational consumers fastly adjusting car manufacturers. The actual observed data in reality would be 230 times 176, which is, according to the authors, the interpretation is that it seems to be good enough, right? Imagine there are all these sorts of adjustment margins, and it seems to go at least 75% of differences in energy bill as a result of price changes go through as reflected in price gap between purchasing price of cars. So does this, what's your takeaway from this study?
Well, as we can see, poor people, one that buy more cars will be more affected by the increase of price, so they will try to buy smaller cars. And about sports cars, they don't change, maybe because usually are very rich people that buy sports cars, and they don't care too much about the cost of the gasoline.
Yes, obviously there are also other factors, so we're simplifying things a lot. Here we're kind of assuming consumers are homogeneous. So under under assumptions that everyone drives their cars for 12,000 miles. The reason that we're exploiting differences in changes in gasoline price over time is that that's the way where we're controlling for the fixed factors of these two cars. It's like difference in differences approach, where we assume these cars are different on other dimensions as well. Maybe Accord gives you better driving experience. Accord has more colors to choose from. But all these factors are not responding to changes in gasoline price. The only feature that responds to changing gasoline price is its attractiveness of as a more energy efficient car. That's a cleverness of this approach. But of course, there are a lot of other things to think about, like obviously the 12,000 miles assumption is an important one. The discount factor is an important assumption as well. They tried all sorts of calculations, and what they believe is that the pass-through rate is somewhat high, kind of higher than their expectation. Like you would expect maybe the price adjustment is about 50 or something. That appears to be good enough. The price adjustment rate is 75%, which seems to tell us that consumers have a pretty strong response. When consumers face higher gasoline price, they will switch immediately. Their demand responses are immediate enough, and apparently strong enough for cars with better performance in fuel economy. That's their interpretation of the results. It's saying that maybe we just talk too much about energy efficiency. Consumers are smart enough. Consumers are adjusting their demand for different modes of cars when they see changes in gasoline prices. It means that they're rational enough. They take account of the impact of gasoline price fluctuations into their future discounted energy bills, and they've already been able to compare that to the purchase prices of cars. That's the reason, the only reason for car makers to make adjustments in car purchasing prices for cars with different energy efficiency in face of changes in gasoline price is because consumers care about energy efficiency, right? Consumers are making somewhat right calculation about energy efficiency for these results. It's their takeaway. Are you convinced by these results? So that paper was trying to say, at least in the car market, at least in the American car market, energy efficiency is a factor, is an important factor affecting decisions, and there is not a strong. Of course, the adjustment is not 100%, but it's already strong enough to suggest that people are taking account of fuel efficiency of cars into consideration in somewhat acceptable rate. So we shouldn't just push too far about nudging them into driving more energy efficient cars. They're not driving energy efficient cars, not because they don't know that these cars are not energy efficient. It's because these cars just are more powerful and faster and give them better driving experience. So a takeaway might just be that in order to nudge people into driving more energy efficient cars, we need to deal with we need to motivate car manufacturers to solve to improve the performance of energy efficient cars. Like how could we make energy efficient cars more attractive in other dimensions as well? I think Tesla is a good example. Like Tesla is energy efficient, and it's given people all the other things they care about cars. And there was discussion about maybe there was a stigma about energy efficient cars. Like whenever you buy an energy efficient cars, maybe people say that the cars look cheap. The fact that you're buying energy efficient cars suggests that you care about you're calculating, whatever. It's not a positive signal on your social status. But with the addition of Tesla into the manual cars that people are selecting from, maybe it really it's an important factor to remove the stigma effects associated with energy efficiency. I don't know whether it's true. Like when you're driving in energy efficient Japanese cars, does that affect? Because we know driving. I don't know. I don't drive myself, but a lot of people who drive says that the type of car is a signal of status. And there is a lot of information carried about random cars that you cannot imagine if you're not into this business. So that's why maybe the policy implication should be we should make energy efficient cars sexier, carry more positive branding information. Another idea for you is, can we do the same thing for appliances or houses? Can you think of similar empirical tests to see whether or not people have fully accounted for the energy efficiency or the insulation, heating, cooling capacity of cars? That's on cars, not houses, and they're making purchase decisions on houses.
Well, isolation and air conditioning systems, efficient one. can, if we make computation about the years in which we can use, I mean, isolation should last many years, 20 or more. Air conditioning can last as well at least 10 years. So we can estimate the savings by having a cheaper, an efficient air conditioning of a heating cost that is reduced during winter time. So we can also make an estimate of how much a house is more valuable, or how much the rent should be higher because we save some money in terms of utilities.
Yes, obviously. The similar analogy would be if the heating cost, let's say it's natural gas cost, or I don't know what people use for heating. Suppose you use gas heated houses, you live in gas heated houses. Hopefully, when gas prices of natural gas prices increase, you should expect the rental rate of better insulated houses to, the price gap between better insulated house and less well insulated house to widen. The same way, the price gap between Econ and Camry to widen, right? For appliances, similarly, like when the electricity price increases, we should expect the price of more energy efficient air conditioner. The price of air conditioner should drop in general, but the price of energy efficient, better performance air conditioner should drop less than that of energy inefficient air conditioner. So there is this study. There's a depth study to study houses. So in New England, some houses are heated with gas, some are heated with oil. So the relative price of oil and gas could change a lot over time. So if oil at some period of time appears to be more expensive than gas, then oil heated house should be less attractive than gas heated house. The rental rate should adjust if renters consider heating, energy efficiency and heating as much as what we expect them to take that into consideration. Right? So I will not go through this example in greater details, but the finding is that home prices move in line with gas or relative price changes in the same way as the car example. So I forgot what their value appears to be. But in general, when gas prices are more expensive comparatively to oil prices, the gas heated house become less attractive, and there will be price adjustments. But they also find that the same story does not hold for renters. So the purchasing price of houses differ. The purchasing price of houses adjust somewhat closely facing relative gas oil price changes, but rental rates do not adjust as closely as what we expect. So the idea is that there is some inefficiency associated with renting. Either it's just renters don't care, or there isn't an effective price mechanism that translates the cost, pass through the cost of renters in form of higher or lower energy bills into lower or higher rents that they demand from the landlords. I think it's a piece of evidence consistent with the idea that the previous evidence that in California the owner-occupied houses typically have better performance in energy efficiency. So that's the way you test for this energy efficiency gap. So far, evidence on energy efficiency gap is not conclusive. There isn't a strong evidence suggesting that people have been making vastly underinvestments in energy efficiency technologies. But we need to think about reasons or other policy instruments. So obviously, we need to focus on the hard externalities. There are also some discussions we had about how to correct these externalities for information deficiencies. We should try to offer more tools in dealing with information inefficiencies, like education, information access, branding, more marketing. You can have all these tags attached to your air conditioner telling you how efficient your air conditioners are. You should have all the calculating tools available to you when you're making decisions about cars, houses, or even air conditioners. Okay, so basically the evidence is that basically we don't have a very strong evidence on the existence of large energy efficiency gap. That actually leads us to think about the reasons why people are not going for the most energy efficient choices, although they appear to be attractive in the first place. There must be some hidden costs associated with more energy efficient choices, where at the service, basically when the EPA is doing a counting exercise with cars, not taking into consideration. That's a future research question. Future, because I think you can form your own views as well, at least for cars. Um, that's so much for the classes. Any questions? If we don't have any questions, we can just call it a day and good night and see you next week.
Thanks.
Thanks. So next week the plan is to just briefly talk about climate change, and going over kind of a short review session. Hopefully, I will give you more questions for practices. Like let me know if you have any demand for the final lectures. If that's it, thank you and see you next week.